Hey y'all, I'm James Wright. Welcome to the shop. Today, I've got this corner chisel that needs to be sharpened, and this is one that's a little bit confusing, so I want to actually talk through what all I need to do to get this thing sharp. So first off, let's take a look at this thing, and this one is not in good shape. It is actually in quite a poor shape. First off, you can see the tip actually has this like spur sticking out, where it is farther out than the rest of the blade. Number two, someone's just taken a grinder to this thing and had way too much fun. And it's not sharp in the least. It is incredibly dull. So we have a good bit of work to do on this. Now with a corner chisel, we want these backs to be perfectly flat. We don't want any chamfer on this. We don't want any back bevel on this because this needs to have a solid reference all the way down the side. That's very different from a V-tool. On a V-tool, the bevel is on the outside. It's an out-cannel gouge, and it's flat on the inside. But even if there is a little bit of bevel on the inside, it's not a problem because it's not referencing anything. This is intended to plunge cut into the work, whereas this is intended to reference on the surface and pair off what it's running into. So because of that, we need to make sure that the grind gets all the way into the corner. We want to make sure that corner is incredibly sharp, but it has to come to the sharp corner that the outside has. And that is the hard part. With a V-tool, it doesn't actually come to a sharp point. The V-tool actually has a rounded gouge on the tip. And so that's a little bit different and much easier to sharpen. Getting into that little corner and actually getting that to a 90-degree sharp point is very difficult. So the very first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of this point up here, and you can see there's another point back here. Same thing on the other side. It's just like a gully in the middle, and that's often what you see with grinders. They booger the whole thing up. So I want to actually make it straight on this side and on this side. It doesn't have to be perfectly 90 degrees to the outside edge of the chisel, but it does have to be perfectly straight across there so you can get a nice clean bevel. So let's do that. Now this step really hurts. This is my extra coarse diamond plate. Put some lubrication on there, or some Windex, and I'm just going to put this straight down on there. I'm going to grind this tip flat. We're going to keep it up and down, and we're going to go until those edges are flat across. And that way we know that they're flat, we can then grind a bevel onto that flat edge. You don't have to make sure the chisel is perfectly vertical, it just has to be flat. And so in this case, it's actually going to tip a little bit, so this point will stick out a little more. That's perfectly fine. If you are really concerned about having a corner chisel that can get all the way down and do a cornered square bottom, then you'll want to grind it flat. And you can see this one is going to require a lot. But for most chisels out there, it really isn't worth it. So just put it on its natural angle and sharpen it back. And after just a few passes, a couple moments, we're almost there. You can see how there's a shiny spot on the tip, shiny spot back here, but there's a little bit there, and a little bit halfway in that I'm not quite getting. So just got to do a little bit more, make sure that that's nice and shiny all the way across. And there are going to be a few people on there that this really annoys, not just from the sound, but from the fact that I'm keeping it on that angle rather than putting it vertical. I know the perfectionists in the group want it to be perfectly vertical, because that pleases them. But for 99.9% of all of its use, really doesn't make a difference. And there, now we've gotten it flat all the way across there. You can see there's a shiny spot all the way along the edge, and that means that it's now flat from point to edge and point to edge. Now we can actually get onto the sharpening. So let me give you a quick example of what we're looking for. When you look on the end of this, you want to see an infinitely small edge as both of these come to a point at the same location. And so if you look on, you shouldn't see any reflection on that tip. Right now though, we see reflection that looks something like this. And there's a big flat spot here, there's a big flat spot in the corner, and a big flat spot out here, and it's almost touching here and almost touching here. Now what we want to do is we want to grind back all this extra material until we get back and all of that edge disappears right at the same time. Particularly, we want to make sure we're working on this corner section. We want to get this ground all the way back into there. We don't want anything sticking out in here because any flat spot here means this whole chisel isn't going to work. So if you have a whetstone or a slipstone and you want to get that in the corner, you want to make sure that the corner of your stone is sharp. You want to make sure that the corner isn't rounded over, because if the corner is rounded over, you're never going to get all the way back in there. So if you're doing it with a whetstone, it's just going to be very, very patient, taking your time doing it, and then occasionally you're going to have to come back and dress the two faces of your stone to get that corner back good and sharp. Because grinding out all the way into the corner is going to wear out the corner of your stone faster than anything else. If you're using a diamond stone, well, some diamond stones get pretty close. Most of the time the diamonds aren't actually all the way out on the corner. They start in just a millimeter or two into the edge. So you're not going to get all the way into that corner. Plus, you only have diamonds on one face, you don't have it on the other face. So to get all the way into that corner, you have to do it this way, then you have to turn around and do it this way, and you have to go back and forth making sure you're doing that. And then you're still not going to get all the way to the corner. So I like to start with the diamond plate overhanging the edge just a little bit, hold it in place with the hold fast. And then I'm going to set this on here, and I'm just going to go to town as much as I can from this angle, trying to keep the bevel right. And I want to make sure both my angle this way and my angle this way are right. So I want it to be up the same amount I want it to be out. Then, after doing it on this side for a little while, I'm going to turn around, rotate the chisel a little bit, and then do it on this side. So here you can see we're getting a nice shiny spot on the edge, and out on this edge, and right in the corner, and we're not hitting anything here in the middle. That's right where we want it to be. We want to spend most of our time out on the two edges and in the corner. And particularly I want to make sure that this corner gets sharp at the same speed this does. So if I'm taking off material here faster than I am in the corner, I'm going to want to adjust the angle to make sure that I'm taking more material off of the corner. So as they say, back to the grindstone. Okay, so after about 10 minutes or so of grinding, we've gotten this pretty much down, and you really shouldn't be able to see much of any light coming off that edge. There's a bit of a burr running along it, you'll see that. But right on the corner, there's just a tiny bit left. The diamond plane wouldn't get all the way into the corner. So to fix that, we're going to use the slipstone. A slipstone is a tiny little whetstone, and it's designed to fit a specific shape. You can get it in triangles and rounds and half rounds, and it's basically the whetstone that you can then hold in your hand and run it against the work. So for this, I'm going to keep this corner nice and sharp and put this back into my belly, hold it out here, lock the chisel in place, and then I'm going to use this to just work back into that corner. So after a minute or so of that, now I can feel a burr right on the tip and all the way along the edge. I've got a burr hanging off the back on all edges and the corner. So we are at a good sharp edge all the way around there. That's extra coarse. Now we're going to take it to coarse, and then medium, and then full fine. And what I'm going to look for is I want to make sure all the scratches from the previous stones have come off. Nice and clean. Flip it around, do the other side. So I've gotten rid of all the scratches on this face here, but on this face, I've gotten rid of most of them except for a little bit right up here in the corner. So I just got to spend a little more time on that spot there, and this will be ready to go on to the fine stone. After a few minutes on there, got a fairly nice grind all the way into the tip. Now I still have to do a tiny bit on here with the finest whetstone, but I'll just grab that fine slipstone and nick that up just a little bit. Now the problem is, we've got a burr all the way along the back, a very, very, very fine burr all the way along the back. And we need to get rid of that. So we're going to actually use a strop to clean that off and get all the way into the corner. So just like with the plates, we're going to put the strop here on the counter, and I'm going to add in some green buffing compound. And if you don't have these, I do sell the strops and buffing compound in my shop. I want to make sure I particularly load up the corner, the very, very edge. And then it's going to be the same thing, except for rather than going backward and forward, I'm just going backward. So I'm going to do 10 strokes or so this side, making sure to work the edge on there. Then we're going to rotate around. You can see how that bright green turned black very, very quickly. That black is actually the iron coming off of the chisel. Then after those, we're going to flip it over, and we're going to pull the burr off the back. A couple of strokes this side. Then roll it over, do the front edge again, Couple strokes on this side, couple strokes on this side. Then do the back again, making sure not to hit the hold fast. And we can almost see that burr popping off. Just barely hanging on there. So just a little bit more, and it'll come right off. Then once that burr has fallen off, it's sharp and ready to go. And you can see that mirror polish on there. That is a very, very sharp edge that's ready to cut. And normally I don't test it because I just know how sharp it is, but I can bring it over here and show you. I can shave my arm with it, and there's a good bit of hair that comes off. One of the best tests you can do is in grain white oak. So I'll set this in here. And very, very little pressure. Getting beautiful curls. Trying not to dig in deep or pop out. I mean, just like that. Yeah, it's sharp. And there you have it, a sharp corner chisel. And this is going to be a lot of fun. Now, if you want to see a corner chisel in use, I don't use them that much because particularly ones this big, they're more for a timber framing, and I don't do a whole lot of that. But I did use one on the mantle that was a video that recently came out, as well as on the mailbox post that I made a while ago. They are great for when you need to get a nice clean corner that's deep and big. A big corner chisel like this comes in fantastically handy. For general woodworking in the shop and making cabinets, they're really not that useful. And there are some smaller ones. Lee Nielsen makes some smaller corner chisels that are great for mortises, but most of the time I just find that they're not quite worth it. But for timber framing, they are phenomenal, and that's where they really shine and where most of them are. Big ones like this that are 7/8 by 7/8 or even bigger. There aren't many videos on YouTube about corner chisel sharpening, so I thought this one might be an interesting one. It's basically sharpening a chisel, except for you're sharpening two, and you want to make sure you get right up into that corner so you get a nice clean cut. But with that being said, they're a lot of fun to have in the shop. So if you don't have a corner chisel, do you need one? No. Do you need one? Yes, because you need all the tools. So I hope you like this video, a little bit different, a little bit fun. So if you do have any questions, comments, ideas, there are 100 ways to sharpen a corner chisel, so let me know your favorite way down in the comments below. Also, I want to say a huge thank you to the patrons on Patreon, members here on the channel, everyone who is supporting this channel and making it happen. Thank you. All those names of people scrolling on the side, they are quite literally the reason that these videos are still coming to you today. So thank you to everyone who's scrolling on the side. If you do ever meet them, tell them thank you. If you would like to find out more about supporting the channel, you can go to woodbywright.com/support, or click the Patreon button down below, or click the little join button there. It really does mean a lot, and thank you for that. So I think that'll about do it for now, and until next time, have a wonderful day. You know, I've heard of painting yourself into a corner, but sharpening yourself into a corner? That's a whole new level.